At the heart of the animal rights debate is the issue of how humans and animals should interact with each other. Are animals a natural resource for humans to use as they will? Or are they free beings with the right to live their lives without interference? Is there an acceptable compromise somewhere in between? Some people answer these questions differently depending on their cultural practices, religion and beliefs, and everyday experiences with animals. To understand how the debate has evolved over centuries, it is important to examine history and see how the human-animal relationship developed and changed over time. As in the case of different human perspectives about the origin of life, the human-animal relationship is approached from the broad umbrellas of science and religion, spirituality. Evolutionary science holds that humans are animals that have changed and adapted over hundreds of years to take on their current form. Some scientists believe that humans and other primates share a common ancestor millions of years ago, and that at some point the human-animal split off from their evolutionary path. Those who believe in the evolution theory think that human primates left the treetops and began walking upright, using their hands to make tools and increase their survivability. Most non-human primates had a vegetarian diet, but humans began capturing small animals and scavenging for meat from carcasses left behind by predators such as lions. A belief system called animism has been traced back to the Paleolithic Age, the earliest period of the Stone Age. Animism is the belief that every object, living or not, contains a soul. These animals, trees and even rocks had spiritual meaning to prehistoric people. Anthropologists theorize that humans may have believed that they could capture the spirits, thus fierceness, strength and speed, of wild animals by eating their flesh, and likewise, some wild animals may have been worshipped as gods by early humans. After the Great Ice Age, the hunter-gatherers had increasing difficulty finding the big game they had hunted before. Scientists believe that mammoths and many other large animals were driven to extinction around 10,000 BC because of the climate changes, overhunting by animals, or both. Humans tried to hunt smaller animals and began gathering and earthing plants in centralized locations. This major shift from nomadic lifestyle to settled existence had a tremendous effect on the human-animal relationship. Except in the case of deification of animals in scientific history of human-animal relationship, it seems that non-human animals were majorly considered game for food by humans, and prior to domestication, the only relationship that existed was hunting. The people of most ancient civilizations were polytheistic, meaning that they believed in more than one god. Many ancient people worshipped animals as gods, used animals to represent gods, or thought that gods could assume animal form whenever they wished. The New Testament mentions many animals, but mostly in the context of everyday life and as food source. Christians did maintain the belief of the Hebrew Bible that humans had dominion over animals. The importance of human soul was central to Christian theology. Many Christian philosophers of later centuries, such as St. Augustine, argued that only humans, not animals, had rational minds and souls. Although ancient Indians had varied beliefs, many of these beliefs were blended together into practice of Hinduism around 3000 BC. In general, Hindus believe that animals and people experience rebirth after they die. In other words, a human can be reincarnated as an animal, or vice versa. This means that all life forms are to be respected. Buddhism was founded during the 6th century by Siddhartha Gautama. Buddhists believed that animals were important spiritually and were evolving toward a higher consciousness, just as humans were. Therefore, Buddhists consider it wrong to cause harm to animals or any other living being. Similar in many respects to Buddhism, though older. The Jains are so adamantly opposed to killing of any life form. They allow themselves to be bitten by mosquitoes and gnats, rather than swatting them. They often carry brooms so that they can brush worms out of their paths to avoid stepping on them. The Jains strongly condemn the eating of any meat. They became well known in later centuries for their animal hospitals. Based on the teachings of Confucius, a Chinese philosopher who became popular for his sayings about having a happy and responsible life. In general, Confucius encouraged respect for animals but not reverence. In other words, animals were not to be treated as deities. Killing animals for food was allowable, but killing them for sport was not. This is a spiritual philosophy that developed in China during the 5th and 4th centuries BCE. Taoists believe that there is power that envelops and flows through all living and non-living things and that all life should be respected. Judaism was unique among many religions of the time because it was monotheistic. The Hebrew Bible is also called Old Testament and comprises part of what later became sacred text of Christianity. According to the first book, Genesis, of Hebrew Bible, God created the earth and populated it with all kinds of creatures. God granted humans dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over all wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the face of the earth. This idea of dominion was to have preferred effect on Western civilizations for centuries to come. However, the Old Testament also states that the righteous person regards the life of his animals. The first kingdom appeared in the Arabian desert around 1000 BC. Before that time, the region was inhabited by scattered families and clans, many of whom were nomadics called Bedouins who raised camels. The Bedouins were animists who believed that spirits lived within every natural thing. Islam was founded around 6th century AD, modeled around monotheism. The Quran is the Islamic sacred text and includes many references to animals, particularly camels. Falcons, pigeons, cats and horses were also considered important in early Islamic cultures. Even though classical Greece was associated with a variety of cultures, the classical Greek period from 500 to 300 BC was the most influential for future ideas about animals. The classical Greeks did not have one central philosophy but followed the teachings of various schools established by wise men and philosophers. Some of the most important scientists were Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. In general, animals were widely used for food, clothing, and work in Greek society. The uses were questioned on moral or philosophical grounds because the people believed that everything in nature had a purpose. In other words, plants existed for the welfare and enjoyment of humans. However, the philosopher and mathematician Pythagoras and his followers did not eat meat because they believed that animals had souls. Many other Greeks, including Plato, recommended a vegetarian diet for ethical or practical reasons. Plato believed that a vegetarian diet made a good economic sense because it required less than animal husbandry to produce food. The Roman Empire began as a single city, the city of Rome, which became a republic in 510 BC. The Romans had warrior mentality and built their empire by conquering other people and cultures. The rulers of the empire delighted in brutal competitions and sports and invested in many games to entertain the citizens. The events were held in coliseums where animals were pitched to fight to death with each other or humans. Often, the animals were chained together and tormented by burning irons and darts to make the fighting fiercer. They practiced animal husbandry with cattle, pigs, sheep, goats, and chickens and kept dogs as pets or working animals. The centuries that immediately followed the Middle Ages are called the Age of Enlightenment because waves of intellectual and scientific advancement swept across Europe. Many superstitions and customs disappeared as societies became more urban and less rural. Animal experimentation was to become a major research tool of modern medicine. In 1543, Belgian doctor Andreas Vesalius published some observations on the dissection of living animals. Vesalius hoped to convince other doctors that the study of anatomy was essential in improving medical care. He advocated cutting open living animals to teach students about blood circulation. During the 1600s, René Descartes, a French philosopher and mathematician, proposed that humans were philosophically different from animals. Descartes was fascinated with the field of mechanics and extended its ideas into animals. He wrote that animals were mechanical things like clocks and therefore could not feel pain. This helped make it socially acceptable to cut open animals while they were still alive for medical and scientific purposes. The process became known as vivisection and was widespread in Europe in the 18th century. One of the main focus of human-animal relations has been on the human use of animals. Humans exploit animals in a wide variety of ways, including for food, clothing, draught power, transport, and entertainment. Animals are commonly referred to in telefunctional terms, as they exist to be used and exploited by humans, as in terminology such as beast of burden, game animals, and food animals. We humans have a strong tendency to define animal lives in terms of human purpose. But while this human tendency to see animals in terms of their usefulness is widespread, the precise use to which a given type of animal is put can vary markedly and surprisingly, even shockingly, from one society to another, like the pet-pot use contrast, whereby an animal treated as a pet in one society is used as meat in another. Human relationships with wild animals tend to be limited to the formal kind in ways as these animals are disposed to avoid direct contact with people. Tame animals are a different matter. On account of its tolerance of human proximity, the tame animal can become a serial interactant and form inter-individual personal relationship with humans. The earliest form of relationship humans had with other animals is in the form of food. When humans were simply hunter-gatherers, they would often eat recently deceased animals, as well as other small insects that would be found surrounding these decaying corpses. However, when humans ceased to be hunter-gatherers and instead formed structured hierarchical societies, the relationship between humans and animals shifted. The change happened in the form of the domestication of animals for the benefits of humans. The earliest animals to be domesticated were sheep and pigs, with these being domesticated for food around 12,000 BC in Southeast Asia and Mesopotamia respectively. The domestication of animals continued through the great ancient civilizations, with cattle, goats, sheep and pigs being reared for food in ancient Egypt. Chickens are used in farming for two purposes: for their meat and their ability to produce eggs. In both cases on factory farms, the chicken's environment is controlled to ensure that the company running the farm makes the maximum amount of profit. This means that the aim is to have the birds grow as fast as possible with the minimum amount of food to cut costs. Furthermore, to again maximize profit, the majority of chickens on factory farms are kept in crowded, unwanted conditions inside sheds with limited natural light. Most of other livestock and poultry are usually used for food and are treated in similar manner without proper handling. They experience stress at different levels by virtue of them being subjected to conditions not in synchronization with their natural habitats and routine. Most of the measures put in place by their owners are usually for the prime benefit of profit maximization. At the final phase, where their controlled life comes to an end for profitable means, the animals are usually slaughtered through horrific methods, ignoring their instinctive abilities as sentient beings to suffer and feel pain. Veganism is the practice of abstaining from the use of animal products, particularly in diet, and an associated philosophy that rejects the commodity status of animals. An individual who follows this diet or philosophy is known as a vegan. Distinctions have been made between several categories of veganism. Dietary vegans, also known as strict vegetarians, refrain from consuming meat, eggs, dairy products, and any other animal-derived substances. An ethical vegan is someone who not only follows a plant-based diet but also extends the philosophy into other areas of their lives, opposes the use of animals for any purpose, and tries to avoid any cruelty and exploitation of all animals, including humans. Another term is environmental veganism, which refers to the avoidance of animal products on the premise that the industrial farming of animals is environmentally damaging and unsustainable. Vegetarianism established itself as a significant movement in 19th century Britain and the United States. The minority of vegetarians avoided animal food entirely. In 1843, members of Alcott House created the British and Foreign Society for the Promotion of Humanity and Abstinence of Food. Alcott House also helped to establish the UK Vegetarian Society, which held its first meeting in 1847 in Ramsgate, Kent. The Medical Times and Gazette in London reported in 1884. There are two kinds of vegetarians, one an extreme form, the members of which eat no animal food products whatsoever, and a less extreme sect, who do not object to egg, milk, or fish. The Vegan Society belongs to the latter, more moderate division. A pet is a domesticated animal that lives with an individual or family, usually as a source of companionship and pleasure. There are popular, well-known pets like dogs and cats and parrots. Alternatively, there are less common pets sometimes called exotics, such as snakes, turtles, and iguanas. While a pet is generally kept for the pleasure it can give its owner, often this pleasure appears to be mutual. Thus, pet keeping can be described as a symbiotic relationship, one that benefits both animals and human beings. As the keeping of pets has been practiced from prehistoric times to the present, and as pets are found nearly in every culture and society, though some largely more than others, pet keeping apparently satisfies a deep, universal human need. The history of pets is intertwined with the process of animal domestication, and it is likely that the dog, as the first domesticated species, was also the first pet. Perhaps the initial steps toward domestication were taken largely through the widespread of human practice of making pets out of captured young wild animals. Eventually, a working relationship developed between the dogs and their human captors. The dog was swifter, had stronger jaws, and was better at tracking prey. Therefore, it could be of great use in hunting and guarding duties. Domestic pets were after depicted in the scenes of family life in ancient Egypt. Hunting dogs of the greyhound or Saluki type accompany their masters to the chase, and lay dogs frequently sit under the chair of their masters or mistresses. The primary bond distinguishing a pet-owner relationship is affection. Often, this relationship is unabashedly sentimentalized in myth, art, and literature. The affection between Alexander the Great and his favorite horse, Bucephalus, has become legendary. The links between animal and human health has been sustained throughout the history of mankind, from causes to cure of human diseases. 7 main aspects should be highlighted when considering the connection. Animals as the cause of the disease for humans and vice versa. Since ancient times, human beings have related the appearance of certain diseases and epidemics to the presence or influence of animals that are considered to be presage bad omens, diseases, and death. As pointed by Wolf Human hunter-gatherer populations currently suffer, and presumably have suffered for millions of years, from infectious diseases similar or identical to diseases of other wild primate populations. Diseases and infections that are naturally transmitted between animals and humans are known as zoonoses and have been known to affect human health throughout history. Such diseases have an important impact on public health and economy, from well-known or well-understood direct transmission routes such as bites and rabies, or less obvious pathways, the risk factors or potential exposure routes of which are difficult to recognize and are interlinked in a relationship network between human beings, animals, and the environment. There is a rising threat from emerging infectious diseases spreading to people and other animals, fueled by human activities ranging from the handling of bushmeat and the trade in exotic animals to the destruction of wild habitat. Despite warnings of the potential significance for human disease or changing patterns in their relationship with animals and the natural world, scientists have continued to treat human and animal health as largely independent disciplines, while historians have also neglected the important aspect of human disease. In this sense, it is crucial that the interdependence between animal and humans be considered in the development of new public health practices. Animals as sentinels of human health. As discussed previously, animals suffer a similar spectrum of disease as humans and therefore may be sensitive indicators of environment hazards and provide an early warning system for public health intervention. The concept that disease occurrence in non-human animal population, wild and domestic, can serve as sentinel warning of an environmental threat to human health has a long history. Studies of the effect of environmental exposure on domestic and wild animals can corroborate or inform epidemiologic studies in humans. Currently, however, physicians assessing environmental health risks to patients do not routinely include animal sentinel data in clinical assessments. Public health practitioners are unlikely to respond to mortality events in animals that are not clearly due to West Nile virus or other known zoonoses, such as rabies. Reasons for the underuse of animal, human, and ecosystem health. Insufficient knowledge of veterinary medicine and few institutional protocols to incorporate animal data into public health surveillance. Both human and animal health professionals have gained an increasing awareness that diseases events in animals' population may have direct relevance to human health. Animal-assisted therapy. Another way in which animals can be used to ameliorate human health conditions is through human involvement with living creatures as a form of therapy. For centuries, people have noted that animals can have positive influences on human health and functioning. Florence Nightingale suggested in the 19th century that a bird might be a primary source of pleasure for people confined to their rooms due to medical problems. Biotherapy. The use of living organisms for treating human and animal illness is known as biotherapy. As pointed out by these authors, this is an ancient practice, although it has now attracted the interest of many clinicians, biologists, biochemists, and patient advocates and has emerged as a rapid advancing multidisciplinary field of medicine. Some of the principal animals used in biotherapy are maggots, leeches, bees, parasitic worms, and fish, giving rise to fields of maggot therapy, heredotherapy, apitherapy, helminth therapy, and ichthyotherapy. Other uses of animals in health has include animals as source of drugs, uses of animals in medical research, and the use of animals in traditional medicine systems. Moral and legal status of animals. In ancient Greece, Aristotle had a lot to say about animals. He declared that animals lacked reason, logos, reasoning, logismos, thought, dianoia, and belief, doxa. He agreed with Old Testament authors that animals rightfully ranked far below humans in the great chain of being. Aristotle's writings, specifically his History of Animals, nonetheless show he respected animals. He wrote, "In a number of animals we observe gentleness or fierceness, mildness or cross temper, courage or timidity, fear or confidence, high spirit or low cunning, and with regard to intelligence, something equivalent to sagacity." Some of these qualities in man, as compared with the corresponding qualities in animals, differ only quantitatively. That is to say, a man has more or less of this quality and an animal more or less of some other. Other qualities in men are represented by analogous and not identical qualities. For instance, just as in man we find knowledge, wisdom and sagacity, so in certain animals there exists some other natural potentiality akin to these. Other philosophers weighed in as well. Theophrastus, one of Aristotle's pupils, argued that animals did have reasoning, logismos, and opposed eating meat on the grounds that it stole their lives and was unjust. The philosopher and mathematician Pythagoras argued for giving animals respect and treating them with dignity. Plutarch, in his Life of Cato the Elder, noted that law and justice were applicable only to humans, but he argued that beneficence and charity towards beasts is characteristic of a gentle heart. The most comprehensive treatment in the ancient world of man's proper relationship to animals comes from the Neoplatonist philosopher Porphyry, in his On Abstinence from Animal Food and On Abstinence from Killing Animals. European philosophers against animal cruelty. During the 17th and 18th centuries, several notable philosophers and writers spoke out against the mistreatment of animals. John Locke of England wrote that children should be taught from an early age that torturing and killing of any living thing is despicable. In 1713, the poet Alexander Pope wrote the article Against Barbarity of Animals for London Guardian newspaper. David Hume advocated gentle usage of animals for the sake of humanity. The German philosopher argued that cruelty to animals can quickly escalate to cruelty to humans. Stopping animal cruelty for the sake of humans became a rather popular idea and was embraced more easily than preventing of cruelty just for animals' sake. The concept of human dominion over animals has two interpretations, such as humans treat animals however they wish, responsible and compassionate use of animals for the betterment of society is acceptable. Regan believes in the inherent value of individuals and that the interest of all animals should be weighed equally whatever their form is. Sociological and philosophical educational efforts can be seen in the work of Rowling, who points out that science is driven and guided by social values. Hence, husbandry can be considered historically as the root of animal production and animal science. Some philosophers take notice of writings of scientists and those who analyze social attitudes, but others advocate contact with current thinking. For example, Ross' opinion. The best way to become informed is to analyze the position of those who are regarded as experts and well studied on issues. It is important to consider every variety of opinion in an attempt to determine the truth. Bear in mind the average view of the public and take on account of influential thinkers such as Mahatma Gandhi's thought. The greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way its animals are treated. By 2050, the world's population is estimated to be 9 billion, meaning demand for livestock will be on the increase, most especially the 1.2 billion persons in the poverty and 850 million in constant hunger in the regions of sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, and East Asia, and this can be sourced from either farms or the wild. Between January and March of last year, the agricultural sector has contributed 22.35% to the total national gross domestic product with 70.8 million hectares of agricultural land, with maize, cassava, guinea corn, yam, beans, millet and rice being the major crops. When it comes to livestock, goats, sheep, cattle and poultry production, the figures stand at 76 million, 43.4 million, 83.4 million, and 180 million respectively, and 3.2 million metric ton of fish is being consumed annually. The most populous black nation in the world and its growing population does not seem to be slowing down, thus the emergence of food, meat in demand. The reason for the figures is for context purposes. The facets of human-animal relationship cuts across social, cultural, scientific, political, economic, religious, and ethical dimensions. And Nigeria, being a developing nation, reflects on the matter of animal rights and prioritizes on human values, efficiency, and profit attainment, all caused by poverty, the lack of education, and resource scarcity. Over time, there has been pressure from developed nations for the adaptation of international standard practices in the veterinary services to cater for the well-being of these animals. Consumption of meat has been scientifically proven to improve human health, quality of life, and the environment. But at what cost? Because the most of these animals go through tremendous stress from the farm to the point of transportation and down to the final point of slaughtering at the abattoir. These animals experience emotional, psychological, and behavioral stress, and if they are not in check, results in low quality of meat. The first time the presence of veterinary was felt in Nigeria was Diseases of Animal Ordinance of 1917 and Decree to Diseases Animal Control in 1988 for the purpose of preventing and controlling diseases outbreak in the country. And in between that period, Veterinary Council of Nigeria was enacted in 1952 and amended in 1958 to ascertain professional qualification, veterinary legislature, but the obsolete, conflicting and duplicated laws has made VCN cripple. For instance, in the two military decrees, the Animal Disease Control Act, Decree 10 of 1988 was revised. NAFDAC monopolized the regulation and control of food safety matters to pharmacists, failing to accede and concede to the unique roles of the public health veterinarians, which has been clearly clarified in the Animal Diseases Decree 10 of 1988. Every nation is always looking for the next innovative problem-solving idea. In Nigeria's case, reduction of hunger and poverty alleviation is the priority. This can be in the biotechnologies and genetics section in breeding of high adaptive animals best suited for the changing climate and maintaining quality of livestock and general improved animal welfare for non-genetically modified animals. Finally, stakeholders need to be placed where best suited for their roles, and public enlightenment cannot be overemphasized. Hopefully, consumers will not be concerned with the origin and management practices employed in raising these animals. Southeastern and some parts of the plateau relish the consumption of dog meat as a delicacy. The trade of these dogs has gained economic value with the constant influx from neighbors, Niger, due to demand. Pet owners are scared for the safety of their dogs because local thieves are constantly transacting with traders and butchers for quick cash, and this prompted the petition put out by Ms. Cholun to stop the barbaric dog meat consumption in Nigeria with a plea to enact animal anti-cruelty laws, provision of funds to address animal welfare, constant vaccination of these animals, and a stop to this trade. According to Bolanle Hassan, the Chief Executive Officer of PetMe, responding to a question on the differences in animal care and pet raising culture in Nigeria and that of the West, she said, "I'd say we are on the path of getting there, but we are still a long way from acquiring the sort of pet culture practiced in Europe and America. First, the industry is still in its infancy. There are limited veterinary hospitals available. There aren't any pet insurance companies in Nigeria, and because pet supplies are largely imported. Second, there is still a lack of awareness and knowledge gap when it comes to appropriate animal care. Animal cruelty is still a norm, and extra care is not given to the manner in which animals in general, not just pets, are treated." On a positive note, though, we have more people who are caring and getting involved in positive animal care practices. There are also non-profit animal rescue organizations like St. Mark's Animal Shelter and Green Fingers Wildlife that are doing an amazing job caring for animals that have been victims of abuse. PetMe is also trying to bridge this gap by creating a space where people can learn more about how to take the best care of their pets, network and share experiences with the mission to move the industry steps further. It's safe to say, when you visit any city in Nigeria, you will see pets, especially dogs, wandering around, unkempt and most times diseased with injuries on their bodies. Some of the owners of these pets don't care for them, and sometimes those catered for are those that can bath for the sole purpose of selling off the puppies. I have never been outside of Nigeria, but from what I see through media, animals are treated with respect and care. Why not Nigeria? Hopefully this doesn't seem like an attack, but the average Nigerian has no respect for the life of an animal. Go to our zoos, you will see how sick looking the animals there are. That begs the question, do we even respect human lives? It is only in Nigeria that one will attempt to cross the road or street. The driver sees you coming, yet will keep his foot on the accelerator, ready to run you over. Nigeria is a country blessed with diverse ecosystem and within over 22,000 vertebrate and invertebrate species, with another 20,000 more being insects. The wildlife scene is vast, and so is the subsistence rural communities where there is a tussle for land and resource between human and animal. Unfortunately, due to this agricultural expansion, farmers have massively contributed to the increase of endangered species like the lions, mostly shot or poisoned to free land. This is where creation of one national park and 18 game reserves is one of the several initiatives put to address extinction of endangered species, enactment of wildlife laws, signing of international treaties, and manpower development. These measures, however, fail to produce the desired effect, owing largely to public apathy, low level of funding that has left some of these facilities in dire situations, inadequate game laws, and weak enforcement of existing legal provisions. Habitat degradation will continue to happen because of the uncontrolled logging, which has summed up to 0.72 and 2.38% annually. Constant agricultural projects, industrial plantations, highway and urban development, and exploitation of fuel wood over hunting and poaching. On 22nd and 23rd of March 2021, UNODC, in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Environment, NESHIA, and ICPC, undertook the first workshop in a series of corruption risk assessment and management activities. It is the duty of man to protect his younger brothers and sisters in the one family of creation, and I believe animals should be given their rights. Today, wherever I go, they talk of animal welfare. Animal welfare is not the answer. Animal rights are needed. Every animal has certain fundamental rights, and the first right of every animal is the right to live. For you must not take away what you cannot give. And since you cannot give life to a dead creature, you have no right to take away the life of a living one. The 18th century gave rights to man, the 19th century gave rights to slaves, and the 20th century gave rights to women. The 21st century, I verily believe, will give rights to animals, and that will be a glorious day in the history of humanity. I believe there will be no peace on earth unless we stop all killings.